the trailer
Ah,
to Mariposa. And then we're going to start, all right, so, and then we'll just dovetail that. Now, I got a good way to start, and I didn't
okay.
want to start until we, yeah. Okay. All right, so we're starting. Mariana, one of the things that I feel is that the only way to heal is to shine a light. We have to be able to shine a light on corruption and the difficulties, and you've done this through Mariposa. So how did you get involved in this particular film?
Well, I Mariposa is the brainchild of Krista Schleier. She has been documenting the destruction of the borderlands and the rare and precious landscapes from
Mm-hmm.
California to to the port of Brownsville, to the Laguna Madre, for about a decade. And she's a member of the International Association of Conservation Photographers, and she's got a book out on the borderlands, and she's very passionate about these issues. She came to the Rio Grande Valley for the March to Save mission and the March to Save Santa Ana, which occurred, I believe it was the weekend of August 10th in 2017. So we very quickly formed this No Border Wall coalition with diverse members from, Sierra Club and the ACLU to Lupe and other local activists. And Krista showed up for it, I guess, to show her support, but also she was filming and photographing and meeting people, hearing our stories. And I had met her a couple of years before when she was doing a project for Nautilus called Think Like a Scientist, about how harmful border barriers and border wall is, how it interferes with migration patterns, how it cuts off rangelands and separates animals from food and water resources they need. And so she talked to me about finding the contractors on the property and all of that. And also at one of the marches, she met Zulema. Zulema is a migrant and a farm worker, and she has been a part of Lupe, La Unión del Pueblo Entero, as long as it's existed, I guess. And she's received awards recognizing her sacrifice and her activism on behalf of farm workers, everything from protecting them from predatory labor practices to pesticides and other things. And Zulema is on a walker, has some mobility issues and everything, but she shows up and she marches with us. She's been at every event, and she has said, bajo con el muro, down with the wall, and she says, as long as she doesn't speak English, but she says, as long as she has air in her to breathe, to speak, to scream, that she will fight this abomination. And Zulema is uniquely poetic, I think, in this drama, because one of her sons is a Border Patrol agent who has been a part of zero tolerance family separation, and one of her sons is the agent in charge of the Army Corps of Engineers building the wall. So this border wall not only
Oh my God.
divides us politically in the valley, it is a steel cleaver.
Yeah.
It's cutting our lands in half. It's separating us from our physical and natural and cultural inheritance, from our natural resources, our lifeblood, the Rio Grande River. But it is also cutting families in two, separating children from their mothers, husbands from their wives, in
How are we, so how do you see the situation down in the valley, in the sense of, are we beginning to see movement in conversation and getting the people to be able to say, wait a minute, we've got, because the valley is going through an enormous economic change with Boca Chica, and so now we have space tourism that is going on,
Ugh.
LNG places going on, and plastics and all. I mean, it is changing because they're looking cheap land,
Cheap
labor,
labor.
and hey,
The conversations that need to take place are not happening because, we're all busy going about our daily lives. And
aren't we just?
if you don't feel like it affects you directly, then you don't engage in that conversation. So, a huge part of my challenge has been changing the narrative.
Yep.
We hear that everywhere, but I had a local insurance agent who used to be on the Mission Chamber of Commerce board recently come to me and say, hey, how's it going? They still trying to take your land? And I said, you mean poison your water? And he said, what are you talking about? And I said, well, they've waived 28 laws for this project, including the Clean Water Act and the Safe Drinking Water Act and the Solid Waste Disposal Act. Where does your water come from? Why would they waive those laws if they're not going to break them? And he was like, well, I hadn't thought about that. And we had further discussions about that. And I said, they're destroying our beaches. They're permitting 3 new LNG terminals at the Port of Brownsville. They're deepening the ship channel. There's no liquid natural gas really being piped into the Port of Brownsville right now. So why are they building infrastructure for that? Because once the border wall is built, they're putting pipeline in behind it. That is the big plan. And when you look at all the players, Kelsey Warren of Energy Transfer Partners of the Dakota Keystone XL pipeline, who also got about half of that steel from Evraz. When you look at, he's a Texas Parks and Wildlife Commissioner. When you look at our former governor, Perry, who's now the energy secretary. When you look at Eagle Ford Shale and how all of that has to be exported now over to Del Rio and then to Three Rivers or to Port Aransas and further out east, the most expeditious route for all of that will be from Del Rio down the Rio Grande to the Port of Brownsville.
And they wouldn't have any problem because they have already walled it off and
They've already walled it off, and Border Patrol has already hired the former sheriff of Cass County, North Dakota, who worked with Tiger Swan and the FBI to squash the resistance, has hired them to train them in how to deal with protests. In addition, the Texas legislature this year passed House Bill 3557. It criminalizes free speech with a conspiracy clause. It comes with 10 years in prison for protesting critical infrastructure like pipeline. And if a landowner supports or participates or even allows protests on their property, the government can seize the land. That includes the mineral rights there. And when Bush built border wall, the enforcement zone, this dead zone I spoke about, was on average about 40 feet wide, enough for Border Patrol to put in their all-weather terrain road. Under Trump, it's a minimum 150 feet wide. And it includes these lights, when the only things in this country that have those lights are our highways, our prisons, and our pipelines. When Trump came to Texas in April of this year, when he went to Crosby after the plant explosion, he signed 2 executive orders. One of them ordered the EPA to close all of the loopholes that allow states to sue under the Clean Water Act to challenge pipelines. And the other executive order gave sole authority to permitting international pipelines to the President of the United States. In addition, The current federal highway spending bill, a 500-page bill, includes a poison pill. It exempts all pipeline projects from NEPA, from the National Environmental Policy Act. And that is what would make it possible once the government has seized all of this land by eminent domain and put up the border wall. They will go in and put pipeline behind it. And what do pipelines do? They leak, as we've just seen again
Well, of course.
in North Dakota. And that will be leaking into the water table and into the Rio Grande River, into the Gulf of Mexico. And the only source of fresh water for 6 million people will be contaminated.
That hurts my heart.
It hurts everything in me. It makes me want to throw up and cry and scream all at the same time. And people don't know this is what's happening.
Yes.
They think, I'm not affected. The government's not taking my land. But if they saw the full picture. So for 2 years, I have felt like I have been often the lone
Yep.
crazy woman screaming in the wilderness on the banks of the Rio Grande River that this is the truth. This is the plan. And all the pieces are coming together. But I guess I'm still the only one putting that puzzle together for everyone to see.
Thank God. Thank God. Thank God. Thank God that you're doing that. How do you, as a human being, Mariana, get up the next day? What is your recharge process to be able to say, okay, I'm going to get up one more day. I'm going to give it with all of the, because we understand the process that we did not invent corruption in this, but we know that this self-interest and that is systemic. It's part of here. It's in our Mexico. It's part of what we're doing. And so, can we talk about how we reclaim our democracy and reclaim our rights in the process that we're doing? Because it's a process.
Yeah.
Whenever I hear a politician say, "Oh, well, no problem. We'll just have a revolution. It'll just be done." It's harder than that. It's a process. We've got to. My personal view is that we need more women in the because that if there were much more of a balance in the that we would make different decisions.
Well, I would hope so. You know, Einstein is attributed with saying that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And as long as we keep electing old white guys to office, we're going to keep getting the same thing. Only it's not that simple. Although I guess technically Henry Cuellar is white too, because as you said, Mexican or Mexican American is not a race. But you know, in Texas we have this, I call them the unholy triumvirate.
Yeah.
With regard to the border wall and Geo Group and Core Civic, and that's Henry Cuellar, John Carter, and John Culberson. 3 U.S. representatives who are highest on the campaign contribution list for Geo Group and Core Civic. They are literally crafting this policy for profit that personally benefits them and keeps them in power while screwing all of us.
Yeah.
So how do I get up and go to work every day? It's hard. You know, I've received all kinds of threats.
Yes.
My husband and my children have lost friends and business and been bullied and ostracized, and you know, I've lost employees. It's really been awful.
Yes.
But I'm not the kind who's going to kowtow to that or cower or, you know, I am going to, every chance I get to speak or to see Henry Cuellar, call him out for his conflict of interest, which is the polite term for corruption.
Exactly.
as long as we let these people sell us out and screw us over, we get what we deserve.
Yep.
So until everyone is outraged and infurious and says no more, votes them out of office, or runs them out of town,
Yep.
you know? But yeah, I mean, maybe it's going to take more women who refuse to say, I won't let this happen to my children and my grandchildren and my home. You know, Beto O'Rourke came to see me several times when he was, you know, running for Senate, which he was never really doing. It was all a setup for running for president. And then he voted for the 2018 Consolidated Appropriation Act that funded the border wall through us. And I asked him, you know, what the fuck are you doing? How could you do that to us, you know? And he said, I wasn't voting for that. I had to vote for the, you know, when they roll it all into one, we have to make these hard choices. And I was like, yes. And we get to make the hard choices at the ballot box.
Yes.
And everybody's got to do that. Everybody's got to say enough is enough. And maybe we deal with horrors like this for years. But we cannot have dynastic politicians in places where they are the grand lord and overseer. We have to vote them out every chance we get. Let them serve, you know, and I know people say progress takes time. You know, the first term they serve, they're just learning the ropes. Too damn bad. Learn faster. Get in there, have an agenda, get it done, and get out. You know, and we've got to, it's going to be uncomfortable for us.
Yes.
I mean, people voted for Trump saying no more Clintons. I'm not going to have, you know, no more Bushes, no more Clintons, no more Obamas, no more Kennedys, no more. If we wanted kings and queens in this country, we should still be England.
Yeah.
So we didn't get another Clinton. We got this nightmare. But we have a chance to change that in a year. I personally have told everybody who knows me, I will vote for the turd my dog lays 2 minutes before the election if that turd gets the Democratic nomination. And Democrats better decide that they are going to vote for whoever the nominee is.
Yep.
That's how we wound up with Trump.
Yep.
The Republicans, the evangelicals, the Tea Party, the moderates, the rhinos, everybody said he got the nomination, we're going to vote for him. Because that's the only way we stay in power.
Yep.
And we've got to flip it.
This is the thing that I ask about power, because we were talking about this on the pre-interview. And because I try to think of the word, what does the word enough mean? So how does, when we get, what would enough be? Because you talk about how a day in New Orleans, and you know, and spending time there, or getting up and putting your hands in the dirt and working on that, because that really feeds your soul. And but what does this word enough mean?
For the people in power, there's never enough.
That's the point. I think it's as addictive. It must be more addictive than I can even imagine.
Crack or sex or anything.
It must be, because it astounds me how we will sell out principles, sell out our soul in order to keep this thing. It must be extraordinary.
It has to be, to know that you're up there pulling the strings and making the decisions, and we have to get corporations and their money out of our election process. We have to have campaign finance reform in this country, but the bastards aren't going to do it to themselves.
No. Well, and this is the thing that I find curious about that is that, or hard about it, is that where does that campaign finance money go? It goes to the media. Why would the media give up that portion, that huge amount of money that's coming into them? It's such, so there has to be some root into this that we
Yeah.
can begin to.
We cannot discount the mainstream media's role in all of this. John Mayer, who I love,
Tell me who he is.
he's a musician, a
Yes.
songwriter and a musician. And in one of his songs, Waiting on the World to Change, but he says, when they own the information, they can bend it all they want.
Yeah.
And as long as they are crafting the stories that go on TV and in the newspaper, we're in real trouble. A local reporter, Mitchell Furman, who is a stringer for the New York Times, wrote an article about the border wall construction in South Texas. And even though he knows the truth, he knows the truth. He knows that levee wall and levee fence are the border wall and the border fence. And he'd seen the documents and heard the recordings that I have from the Department of Homeland Security and everything. He and another author had a piece published in the New York Times that said the National Butterfly Center wasn't getting border wall. We were getting levee improvements. He's not a journalist. He's a creative fiction writer. And we have to hold the media to task too.
Yeah, we all. This is all. This is the whole thing that I feel about that has been said many times is that Donald Trump is not the disease. He is a symptom of it. It's something that we have to own. I have to own my own part of being in this participatory democracy, this public, this idea of we've got to have this conversation. This is one of the reasons why I wanted to have this conversation with you, is because it's my way of understanding and getting more involved in it, because you inspire me to look at what am I doing and how am I going to be part of this. And so you're going tonight, it happens to be we're in November the 9th, I believe, 10th, of 2019. Tonight you're going to the Texas Observer. You're having the premiere of this film, I, Mariposa.
They're going to show I, Mariposa, and I, Mariposa has 3 characters. It has Zulema and myself and the butterfly. And if I had $1 for every time somebody said, bitch, butterflies can fly over the border wall,
Yeah.
I'd be a millionaire already.
Rah.
But it's not about who can overcome the wall. Butterflies, birds, other things. It's not about all of the life forms that will be trapped between the river and the wall and condemned to death, you know, when the river floods, when we have wildfires. It is about our liberty. It is about the Constitution and our principles. It's actually about our very humanity.
Yes.
And as we're here at the 30-year anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall, how many lessons have we forgotten? Like you said, Donald Trump, we know he's amoral, ahistorical, you know,
Ignorant.
illiterate, you know, the
But
list
that's how,
could go
and I
on.
say ignorant because I understand that. I don't mean that as a pejorative. It's just a descriptive.
But as you said, he's a symptom. And America now has millions more like him because the people in power have underfunded our schools.
Yes.
They have played a very deliberate game of destroying all of the things that belong to us as Americans.
Yes.
In order to cripple us, to make us ignorant, illiterate, to make us ahistorical. Those who don't know their history are doomed to repeat it.
Yep. And that's what that's our opportunity then. Our opportunity is to have these conversations and to be able to say maybe there's something. Everyone is so busy right now, it's hard to keep focus. We work harder and longer than we ever have in history. And so it's hard to keep that focus. And of course, then we also have the wonderful consumer culture that constantly feeds me and gets a part of it. So in order to take a bite out of it small enough for me able to do, what do you recommend? What do you recommend things that I can pay attention to, that can put my mind around, and the wonderful people that are watching us can put our minds around?
I say, invest in children, because we have to educate them, and we need to unplug, not only for our health, but, the television and cable and free internet and Facebook, what I call the digital teat, exists to keep us suckling and distracted and
Right.
comfortable. And until we reject that, we are pawns and puppets. And so you've got to do two things: unplug and connect with children, and connect with children in a way that you're showing them the natural world, you're teaching them history, you're teaching them to read. I call it creating anarchists. Because you have to teach them that why is the key to everything. If you've ever...
Why? And isn't it? And but when you look into the face of these kids that are there at the National Butterfly Center, when you look into the faces, doesn't it give you hope? Aren't they brilliant? Aren't they beautiful?
They are
Aren't they
brilliant,
amazing?
and they're beautiful, and they're curious, and we are all born with this natural curiosity that life works really hard to wring out of us.
Yeah.
Henry Ford and the Teachers College at Columbia developed that school bell system to imitate the factory whistle. I mean, we are programmed so early, and we've got to reject and overcome that. We have to throw off the shackles, and they're shackles on our minds, on our bodies, on our spirits. And why is the key to everything. And back to this corruption and enough and power and government and the laws that are being passed and all the dirty deeds that are being done in the dark. The why is money.
And we will leave it there and have our continue on from that on. How inspiring it is! Thank you for doing the work that you're doing, and that you.
You guys, we have time. If y'all wanted to do one more segment, there's enough material. Would y'all be good with doing?
I would be very
I'm
good.
good doing
I'm
more.
Yeah. Oh, I would love
Am I
it.
becoming redundant already?
No. No, actually not. You're barely redundant.
Barely redundant.
Okay, so
That can be my tattoo on this wrist. Barely redundant.
yet. Count to 30 and it's going.
All right, good enough. I am